That's for me.
Hi.
You promise to be good?
Of course I'll be good.
Seriously, please be good.
Good morning, fellow sewer dwellers. Let us discuss the elephant in the room, Buzz Starfield. Starfield isn't a bad game. There, I said it. He's misunderstood and an outcast.
Where you pay $100 to get humiliated by NPCs in a video game, you'd hastily type hacking 10 times more tedious and time-consuming populated with immortal.
I've been anxiously waiting to make this video, desperately hoping that if I stayed on the sidelines long enough, everyone would collectively realize that they overreacted to Bethesda's latest installment in open-world RPGs. But with every new sunrise, a Starfield bad video sneaks its way across my YouTube recommendations, staining my already sleepless, bloodshot eyes with their tan streaks. It's always yet another 30-minute miserable review-bombing piece of hot garbage with a 40-year-old's take on a game that they haven't even given a day's worth of playtime. I've decided that I'll make this essay, and when the algorithm finally decides to pick up this video, everyone will have shifted their collective distrust and hatred to another intellectual property, and Starfield will become the misunderstood classic that people like me can see it for. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand my negative tone. Many of these older game reviewers I love. I anticipate their first impressions with bated breath to help me make an educated guess as to whether or not I will like any given title. I have chosen specific ones to pay attention to, due to similar tastes, of course. But something happened here. Something strange, but entirely predictable. Everyone expected something outside of the realm of possibility. I used to hate this game. Truly. And now I know why. I initially played for about a week, every other night, completely unable to care. I had a few very glaring issues with it. The primary storyline felt unengaging and not conducive to a character-specific playthrough. Fallout 4 had this problem, where no matter how you wanted to play, you were roped into, "Oh no, my son was taken. Where is Sean?" This doesn't attract any players who have played real role-playing games, to be thrown into a mandatory story with no semblance of control over their own destiny. I wanted to play as an evil character, based off of a character in a novel I'm workshopping, which doesn't mesh incredibly well with the Goody Two-Shoes exploration guild that is Constellation, your first home base in this game. There's also a frequent dialogue option that I couldn't bring myself to select, where you simply ask for work from someone who has no previous conversation with you to allude to the fact that they may have a job for you. Of course, I wanted to do missions, but I was playing a rude character who hated most people, a new endeavor for myself. Why would this egotistical maniac ask for work like a low self-esteem child, putting his fingers together shyly? The performance wasn't incredibly good on launch, and even though that was a main complaint by others, it isn't until about 40 hours now that I am experiencing real bugs. My bugs so far are, Andrea is not behind me in the ship, but in front, running in space / in front of my control console. Airlocks are floating up in the air instead of being mounted onto settlements. Long after a stealth mission, I still get the trespassing warning in the top right corner of my screen. Companions' heads disappear, perhaps with an issue with legendary stealth armor though. A bunch of Sidonian miners don't have their work outfits on for some reason. Some airlocks bug out and make it so you wear the spacesuit inside of the settlement, but not outside. Let's get back to the core issues. Spacesuits don't allow you to circumvent lung damage for some reason. I'm literally not breathing the outside air though. Guns are hard to use until you're about level 10. Unless you find a lucky legendary, you've got to play incredibly safe in combat until you gain the right amount of credits to buy good gear. The space junk problem. There's an insane amount of resources you collect in this game if you're a heavy looter, and no amount of time spent menuing to figure out what companion to pass it off to, or exploring the outpost storage system is fun and satisfying. Fast travel being a necessary part of the game. I was used to playing games like Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky, and Star Citizen, which I feel was a massive amount of this game's audience. If everyone from this camp, like me, are the ones complaining about this game, then I completely understand and sympathize. Those games allow you to hop in your ship and take off from the ground to the sky, not just to orbit. My first 16 hours, this discrepancy drove me insane and is the main conflict I have with this game. I can go anywhere in this game, but not in atmosphere? This is a hard contrast to explain to people who haven't played one of these games, but the ability to pick up and fly above all your points of interest, watching them slowly disappear beyond the horizon, doesn't compare anymore. It lets you actually experience the scale and beauty of the worlds you're flying to and from, as well as the space in between, especially when you play in VR. When I would get on my ship in Starfield, I would always press the take off button, expecting a clunk and a gentle lift off the ground, allowing me to use the piloting skills I had genuinely learned and loved from other games, only to be greeted by the dreaded cutscene. I love the process. I love piloting my own ship through the beautiful setting I'm provided. I'm not saying that Bethesda should have done this seamless travel option, but this is something I personally wanted more than any other gameplay mechanic. I almost didn't buy the game when I heard this wasn't included. For some reference here, Elite Dangerous is a great game mechanically, with most of the game taking place inside of your ship's cockpits. Elite Dangerous Odyssey tried to change this formula up with the ability to run around space stations and on planet surfaces. But even with semi-regular updates, the sheer lack of engaging content in the game leads to a make-your-own-fun approach. There's also a good amount to complain about with Elite Dangerous Odyssey. The community has been begging to have explorable spaceship interiors for one, which Starfield of all space games managed to deliver on. I had this to say about Elite Dangerous on my birthday stream a few months ago.
I have an opinion on Starfield. It's probably not normal opinion. The game is everything Elite Dangerous Odyssey wanted to be, without anything good that Elite Dangerous already was. Because Elite Dangerous is a good game, but Starfield is everything Elite Dangerous isn't. So if you just combined Starfield and Elite Dangerous, you'd have the best space game that's ever been made. That's the truth.
It's kind of like that meme where you have the two books that hold the entire universe's knowledge. Everything they teach you at Harvard, and everything they don't teach you at Harvard. Elite Dangerous's main gameplay components feel thought out and interesting. It has engaging space combat and exploration, amazing faster than light travel systems with an interesting alternate route through neutron stars, an incredible online multiplayer community, seamless gameplay, and a real sense of danger and fun. It also has buggies that you can drive on planet surfaces. And another great thing it has is interesting aliens that aren't humanoid, with a ton of lore. The things that ED failed to deliver on were all a part of Bethesda, and by extension, Starfield's repertoire. A charming, living galaxy, missions that were actually fun, ship interiors and modular shipbuilding, RPG elements that could genuinely benefit the game. By the way, you can remove traits in normal gameplay. When was this a thing in previous games? I happened to wander inside a UC security office looking for something, and stumbled upon a member of my evil cult, and when speaking with them I could express doubt in my god and remove the trait. The same thing happened when I ran into a random therapist, and he offered to help persuade my character out of my introverted nature, which would remove my trait there. Amazing feature, allowing for interesting character growth. I have no notes. All of the RPG elements in Elite Dangerous are essentially personal headcanon that you make up off-screen and are only expressed in ship choice, name, character appearance, and mission selection. There's not much that genuinely inserts your character into the world with a meaningful consequence, outside of blowing up innocent players as a pirate or joining the fuel rats in real life. There's an insanely grindy system that allows you to gain affinity with the different factions in the game, but it isn't intriguing in the slightest, as it essentially boils down to, do a million random fetch quests for that faction, and choose reputation instead of credits for a reward. There are workarounds and hacks, but those require extensive YouTube research and rabbit holes. So what was Starfield offering? Everything Elite Dangerous wasn't, and nothing it was? Not really. I saw all of the trailers and I was sold on the hype. I became overconfident in a product that didn't exist. I even purchased the early access to play a few days earlier on Game Pass. I believe everyone that thinks of this game negatively had a similar expectation as me, that Starfield would be everything No Man's Sky, Elite Dangerous, Star Citizen, and Fallout were, all rolled into one. Instead, we only got Fallout in space. But isn't that what we wanted? Despite all of the issues, something drove me forward, this hope and last-ditch effort to understand the game studio I had come to love over the years, developing and releasing games with compelling stories. Many times the gameplay was lacking in these other games, namely Fallout 3 with its mediocre gunplay, and Fallout 4 with the staggering regression of certain RPG elements and choice. But Bethesda has always managed to deliver an engaging story with interesting choices, be it Elder Scrolls or Fallout, they are beloved by many. So what was I missing? What was the golden sauce that my friends were enjoying about this travesty on the space game genre? Then it happened. I took a chance. I abandoned the main storyline and explored Cydonia, a measly little mining colony on Mars. Funnily enough, one of the main places you go in many missions. There were so many NPCs here, characters going about their days, and they all had interesting issues. Although it was outside of the headcanon I created for my character, I offered to help some of the less fortunate and decided to take care of problems for snobby executives. Needless to say now, this changed everything. The hurdle was hurdled. I went everywhere and did everything and anything. I asked random NPCs in every town what they were doing, what they needed, despite my character not wanting to do something like that. If the NPC had a name, I was asking it questions as the player. The UC Vanguard was suddenly interesting, and not a random security force I hated. The Freestar Rangers burst onto the scene as the independent freedom fighters full of personality. The Crimson Fleet were more intriguing than simple raiders. A dragon-themed corporation filled with lies and deception drew me in with their ill intent and ego. Everything opened up. All I had to do was let go and stop believing the game needed to be what I originally wanted it to be. It could never be that. How could I reasonably expect a game studio, a myriadic collective of innovative game developers, to specifically understand and implement my ideal Bethesda/space sim game? They couldn't, and I should never have expected them to. There's a great many issues I had before that have now been relieved. Fast travel? Going back and forth as a gameplay loop gets tiring after a while. While I would have appreciated the option to fly anywhere and everywhere, I know I would get tired of the process with how many system jumps I do in a regular game session. the Constellation main story. It's a great story for casual players, people who don't care about throwing a specific character into situations like you can with other RPGs, so it's made for most gamers. Bethesda faces a challenge being a popular game dev. Since most casual players have heard of them, they need to weigh out the pros and cons of creating an in-depth story creator for a niche group of players like me. Let's be honest here. How many casuals do you think heard of Larian Studios and wanted a real RPG before Baldur's Gate 3? I hadn't heard of them, and that's not because I don't care about the kind of games they create, but because they weren't a part of the broader gaming conversation yet. Bethesda has to contend with being one of the biggest devs and catering to as wide an audience as they can. And that's okay. It's a choice that makes sense for where the culture was during their development cycle. Now, we have all this talk about crunch culture in game studios. Would you have really wanted Bethesda to have delayed this game another year just so that they could copy Larian's RPG formula? I know I wouldn't have. So the Constellation story is not a great introduction for this character that I made, but that point doesn't change the game's base quality, just my specific use case. Sometimes I would need to take the reins as the player instead of the character, and that's great. I do that in D&D. I can't expect the game to be hand-tailored to me. No Fallout-style radio. Honestly, this is not really that big of a shame. It adds to the atmosphere of space and how quiet it actually is. Besides, I can listen to my own music if I want, and I do appreciate that element. No vehicles on planets. This one still bothers me a little. I suppose there's not a lot of smooth terrain in Starfield like there is in Elite Dangerous, but it would help if I could pick up and get to my undiscovered locations a little bit quicker. Lack of handcrafted points of interest. I've been frequently seeing a complaint where people are upset about Starfield's space being empty. Sorry to be that guy, but have you studied real life at all? If anything, Starfield's galaxy is full of life and interesting places. Ours is barren and dead by comparison. The expectation that a space game needs to have a brand new and handcrafted interesting place around every little moon is very unrealistic. Shipbuilding. All I needed was about 30 minutes messing around and I understood it. I just needed to give it a chance. Once I realized this, I could see the game for what Bethesda had wanted it to be. I could picture their mental ease, as described by Joseph Czar in his video on why you can't articulate like you think. I have a link for that in the description. In essence, he details linguistic variances and how it is essentially impossible to explain in words exactly the image that you have in your head, without an immense amount of connotation. This means that at any given time, someone you're speaking to may have an entirely different visual glossary for a word or concept you are expressing to them, based on their own experiences. Bethesda's colorful articulation finally came through to me when I stopped projecting my ideal vision on their creation. It was like I was watching Toy Story, thinking that it should be solely about Andy and his mom, about how she's a single parent, raising him and his sister Molly. But it's not about that. That is a B-plot. Toy Story is a quaint movie making light of talking toys and their adventures as they navigate betrayal, jealousy, abandonment, and the impending shadow of destruction. Not whatever I want it to be. Just because you want a piece of media to be something it isn't, doesn't mean it should have been what you wanted it to be. My working theory now is this. Everyone expected Bethesda to deviate from their incredibly successful game formula simply because it was a brand new space game, and take new and interesting strides into the current landscape of the space game genre, developing further space sim type elements into it, and stitching them all together into Starfield. Then, once everyone was let down, and Bethesda had simply created another open-world RPG with their special charm in the way that only they could, everyone was immensely disappointed, no matter how beautiful and creative the entire art piece is as a whole. That's why you see this consistent smearing of a game that will only become beloved as time passes. We finally receive a AAA game with an original story and worlds, and this is how we treat it? We haven't learned at all from our exorbitant conjecture. This always happens, and it is not hard to spot anymore. In case you have a hard time with this Starfield slander, as I do, try out the subreddit No Sodium Starfield. When discussing this with a friend, we were talking about how we feel like we were the only ones loving the game. He mentioned that the No Sodium subreddit would be a great place for me, as the main subreddit for Starfield is littered with this constant complaining and refusal to acknowledge the things that Bethesda, once again, got exactly right. I'm letting you know about it in case you also think Starfield isn't actually bad. You can join and post memes and such. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go get some more Dragon Force books for my fellow bookworm Mitch Benjamin. I will catch you in the field. Don't forget to like and sub if you liked the video, that really helps me out. I'll be streaming sometime soon, hopefully, on Twitch, so there's a link to that in the description. Feel free to drop by and discuss any counterpoints. I would be happy to debate them. You're also welcome to stop by the Discord. There's a link for that in the description as well. Have a great day.
Hey, I heard you had Dunlop's disease. Look at you.
What?
Looks like
No,
Dunlop's
I don't
disease
have
is contagious.
Dunlop's disease. What is that?
Your belly Dunlop over your belt.
Asshole.
What? It was a joke. Come on. Dunlop's disease.
My friend's a real comedian.
Dunlop's disease.